Well, I've kept this off long enough. It's time to tackle Mega Man X2. Mega Man X1 is quite personally one of my favorite video games of all time. If there exists a perfect video game, Mega Man X1 is pretty damn close. So a sequel was surely inevitable. It was released in Japan at the very end of 1994, and in the United States nearly a month later in January 1995. And I know a lot of people give X6 a hard time because it was released less than a year after X5, but that's not a trend that's entirely uncommon. It was much more common for sequels to come out a year after their predecessors back in those days. So let's dive deep into the game. If you waited long enough at the end of the original game, you would have found a secret message from Sigma, where he would state that he wasn't dead and that he would be seeing X very soon. Ooh, ominous. Taking place 6 months after the first game, Mega Man X leads the remainder of the Maverick Hunters to wipe out the rest of the Mavericks, and they are heading to a Reploid factory, but little do they know that true war is about to begin. Versus X Hunters. Man, that rolls off your tongue. No, that is not the subtitle. So, X and immediately dead green guy arrive at the factory. X, for some reason, has decided to ditch his armor upgrades from the first game. Why he does this is a mystery I will never understand, but it's classic new game, you gotta start from zero again syndrome. Fortunately, X does keep the dash upgrade, making it a permanent addition to X's abilities, and that's a good change. The opening factory level is pretty standard, it's just designed to get you used to the mechanics of the X game. Nothing's changed. After all, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The big standout is the boss battle against the gigantic Mechaniloid. A quick 4 charge shots will take him down, but then we get introduced to the game's main villains, the X-Hunters, Violin, Agile, and Surges, who actually has an interesting story behind him. There's more to him than appears, something that was sadly lost in the English translation of the game. From there, it breaks into the standard 8 Mavericks. So the first one I did was Overdrive Ostrich. Overdrive Ostrich stage mainly involves using the speeder bike, and I like this thing because it controls pretty well. There's one memorable scene where X rides a missile and ends up destroying it, but it creates the scenery for the boss battle. Overdrive Ostrich has a pretty easy pattern to avoid. He'll run at you, so you jump and blast him. When he skips in place, you run under him. When he's running in the background, always move to the left or right to avoid him. After all, it's a pretty standard boss. The weapon he gives you is the Sonic Slicer, effectively serving as this game's boomerang weapon. The next level I did was Wire Sponge. Wire Sponge, how'd you get a name like that? It is probably the easiest hard tank in the entire series, even if it is out of sight. This level's gimmick is the weather mechanic. Rain and wind all impact how you traverse through the level. Always gotta take out these orb things. Wire Sponge's big weakness is the Sonic Slicer. He likes to hang from the ceiling, which just makes him an easier target. The Sonic Slicer bounces off walls, which makes it super easy to hit him, and when he charges up, it's like, oh crap, I guess he means business now! I've always loved the effect of seeing him get cut in half. So brutal. His weapon, Strike Change, is rather pathetically short range, but it comes in handy for platforming if you need it. After beating 2 Mavericks, the X-Hunters call X and Dr. Kane and let them know that they have Zero's missing parts, and if X wants them back, he has to fight them to claim them. Meaning that if you come across a stage that has an X-Hunter in it, you better go fight him, or else you won't be able to get that Zero part. I'll cover them in detail later. For now, let's go to Wheel Gator's stage. Wheel Gator's stage takes place on an airship, and this is where you get access to the ride armor. The ride armor in this game it's fine, but I much prefer doing things the old-fashioned way of running and shooting. It's a rather intricately designed airship that requires a lot of moving up and down. What really impresses me is how the scenery changes. 2D backgrounds still hold up well today. Wheel Gator likes to hide in the dirty water. If he catches you, he'll drag you into the water. Fortunately, the Strike Chain does a lot of damage to him. The best strategy is to wall jump and kick away when he comes up. Hit him with the Strike Chain. Pretty easy pattern. His weapon, the Spin Wheel, is one of my favorite weapons in the game since it can cut up anything, even the ground. The next stage, Bubble Crab, is one of the underwater levels. It means following this really slow moving fish and it gets really annoying. Just chasing this fish and maybe taking it out along the way. Not much to it, it also feels like the frame rate massively slows down while I'm chasing this thing too, so yeah. Okay, moving on. Bubble Crab is super easy because the spin wheel just cuts through anything. So it cuts through his bubble shield like paper. He's a jumper, so you have to avoid his attacks, but in no time he goes down. The weapon you get, the Bubble Splash, is pathetic. Its base attack is, anyway. Next up is Flame Stag. It takes place on a mountain terrain, which means the view is nice. Rising Lava. Yeah, this reminds me of a part in Mega Man ZX that I played recently off the Zero Collection. I recommend it, by the way. The heart tank is so annoyingly placed here. I hate this one. Flame Stag likes to jump around and shoot fireballs at you, but the Bubble Splash does the most damage to him with its pathetic showing. God, it looks embarrassing. You get the Speed Burner weapon, and I like this weapon as it lets X shoot a fireball, not unlike the Hadouken, but I love using it when it's charged. Next up, I went to Moth's stage. It's a junkyard. What really stands out to me is the fight with the giant robot. If you destroy the body, you have to destroy the bug robot, but you have to do it twice, which kind of wears my patience. The boss, Moth, the first part he is a cocoon, so he just swings around. Although setting him on fire is pretty damn funny. Then he evolves into a beautiful moth. Not beautiful, but you know. But his moth form is again pretty easy as he just flies around and waits to get burned. His weapon, the Silk Shot, is like a bomb that explodes in 4 directions, which adds to a lot of distance you can use to fire it. That's cool. Next up, we will do Magnus Centipede. It's a massive security building, so you have to be all Solid Snake and sneak around, which is not something you really do in Mega Man. It took a lot of practice to get the timing of these orbs down. The mini-boss is a giant sword. The funny thing about editing footage is when you look back, I found parts where I was clearly trying to die on purpose, and yet I wonder why I did that. Probably because I missed an upgrade. Magnus Centipede likes to disappear and reappear, but the Silk Shot takes him out no problem. The Magnet Mime is a mime. Yeah, pretty self-explanatory. Finally, that just leaves Crystal Snail. This level is all about the slopes, which means sliding away. Also, this heart tank is annoying. Large ice blocks falling, and falling, and falling. Yeah, I've run out of things to say about this level. The boss, Crystal Snail, is pretty fun to fight as he just gets knocked out of his shell. The Silk Shot freezes enemies, and I make good use out of that in the next level. What I will say about Mega Man X2's challenge compared to the original is that I don't consider it much harder than the first game. It's about on par with the original. I've always considered a Mega Man game's challenge to be tough but fair. It's why Mega Man X6 is so derived because that game is not fair, but we'll get to that. The music is on par with Mega Man X because Mega Man games always have awesome music. Capcom's good at not messing with a good thing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Some of the heart tanks are really annoyingly placed, such as this one in Overdrive Ostrich's stage. The idea is to use the bite to get it, but I find using the Speed Burner upgrade does the trick well enough. I really do love the armor upgrades. The foot parts allow you to air dash, which is a welcome addition. The helmet part lets you find hidden secrets. The arm part lets you charge up 2 Buster Shots, which is just perfect. And the body part, in addition to added defense, allows you to do a screen nuke that destroys everything in the area. It's just awesome. The first X-Hunter I fought was Violin. I didn't have his weakness at the time, and fighting them without their weakness is definitely manageable, but not quite as easy. He fires a spiked wrecking ball at you that bounces around the room, so it's all about carefully using your wall jumps to avoid the wrecking ball and blasting him with your X-Buster. He's not too bad once you get the patterns down. The second X-Hunter I fought was Surges. He likes to hide in a force field, meaning you have to strike while he's down. I did have his weakness, which is a charged up Sonic Slicer. Somebody made a typo, there is no comma there. Also, he's the one who has Zero's head part. Huh, that's interesting. Agile lives up to his name. He likes to do an uppercut that sends up sword energy, so timing your dash under it is pretty much key to defeating him. Other than that, he's pretty easy. Once all 8 Mavericks are down, X finds out the location of their base. If you didn't get all the Zero pieces, they steal Zero's control chip. If not, then that does not happen. So X goes to face the X-Hunters again. The first level is a pretty standard climb with closing walls. Violin hasn't really changed his strategy too much. It just has blocks to get in the way, which means we can get up high. In fact, Violin seems completely shocked that you managed to beat him. Yeah, well, moving on to the second level, which has the real meat. Underwater levels, missiles that move left and right, and spikes. Spikes as far as the eye can see. Like I've said about Mega Man, it's a game of reflexes. You need to have good coordination to be able to do what you do. The boss fight against Surges has him piloting a mech and trying to make you break his armor. The Speed Burner does the most damage here, and I like to use the Giga Crush to destroy his armor. He says, This is impossible! The prophecy must be fulfilled! Which he doesn't say at all in the Japanese version. In the Japanese version, he says something very different. Defeated yet again by the robotic memento of light? Such regret. Also, at the beginning of the game, he says, greetings. In the Japanese version, he says, Rock X, which would suggest that he mistook X for the original Mega Man. That's also the only time the original Mega Man is alluded to in the X series. Yeah, this all hinted that Surges was in fact really Dr. Wily from the classic series. I will talk about this more in detail when I get to Mega Man X5 because, oh boy, it was such a wasted opportunity. The third level is most notable for the secret you can get, but it happens so late. The real trick is that you can get the Shoryuken. You have to get the timing of the speed burner charge up just right, but if you can avoid that, you can find Dr. Light waiting for you. Wow, you are so cool! I'm not worthy! I'm not worthy! Dr. Light, if you're trying to be a cool dad, you're failing miserably. The Shoryuken can only work if you have full health. Agile is different in that he's changed shape. Nothing a good Shoryuken can take out. I guess that's a cheat, but I had to show it off. From there on out, it's fight the 8 bosses again, then Sigma reveals himself and X dashes off to face him. If you didn't get all the Zero parts, you have to fight Zero here. And it's a pretty fun fight as it really feels like X and Zero are going at it. But if you did get all the Zero parts, Sigma has a black Zero, and the real Zero appears and takes him out. Sigma says Zero was destined to follow him. Zero says, maybe so, but I still don't like you. Oh man, that's just funny. So X and Zero don't get much of a reunion. Zero tells X to go on and fight Sigma while he takes out the main computer. Okay, sure. Man, Zero is a badass. Sigma has Wolverine claws this time around, but I found him to be much easier. Probably the easiest Sigma to date, but then he transforms into a computer head. I know what he really is, but if I say it, well, with the current situation, best not to say the V word. Anyway, the strike chain does the most damage to Sigma. Once he's defeated, he says he will only get stronger, but questions why Zero didn't join his side. After all, he is last of the Doctor's creations. And that Doctor ain't Dr. Light. So X and Zero once again watch the exploding base. X wonders if the fighting will ever truly end. Yeah, rinse and repeat. Is Dr. Light's dream merely that, a dream, or can it be a reality? The future knows. So that's Mega Man X2. I find it to be a relatively sound experience. I'd rank it below the original Mega Man X, I suppose, but the music is still as awesome as ever. The gameplay is refined and the storyline is progressing, so Mega Man X2 is a good game. Next time we do the X series, it'll be Mega Man X3, one of the reported low points of the series, so join me then. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please hit that bell, like, and subscribe button. If you want updates, follow me on Twitter or join my Discord, which are provided in the description below. See you next time.